This is a law firm where you have upward opportunities.
What's your advice to the up-and-comer business development people?
I think everybody should have an entrepreneurial mind. I think everybody should want to develop business. I think everybody should want to get clients.
Can you say more about discouraging efforts?
Don't be discouraged by your efforts because you're not going to see necessarily results on day one.
Can you make yourself irreplaceable?
I mean, nobody's irreplaceable, right?
So what are you learning about yourself at that time?
I'm getting scared.
We're doing the right thing for the right people at the right time.
The least of the problems would be maybe I don't get paid.
Welcome to Leadership Backstage, the podcast that exposes the raw truths behind leadership. We dive deep into blind spots, failures, and bold moves, questioning the myths leaders cling to and challenging you to think differently. Each episode brings unfiltered stories from CEOs, executives, and thought leaders who fought through scaling pains, culture clashes, and high-stakes decisions. This is where courage, clarity, and breakthrough thinking collide, sparking insights that actually matter. Here's your host, Claudia Williams.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to today's episode of Leadership Backstage, where we go behind the curtain of leadership to talk about the challenges leaders face and how they overcome them. Today, we are talking with one of the top legal experts in landlord-tenant law, represents property management companies, owners of conventional and manufactured housing companies, and he's counsel to the Pennsylvania Apartment Association and manufactured housing associations. He's the managing partner of Cohen Segs Palace, Greenhall, and Furman. It's a full-service national law firm, and when he isn't working, you might find him tasting some wine or spending time with his two daughters. The thing is, our guest today is the first managing partner of the firm who wasn't one of the OG founders of the firm. He's not in the home base office of Philadelphia. And so we're going to talk about some challenges of what succession means and how we carry on firm vision. Please meet and welcome Steve Williams. Hi, Steve.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Thanks for being here. So I want to jump in with you. You're the second generation managing partner of a very successful law firm. If you think about your vision for when you complete your term as managing partner, what does the firm look like?
First and foremost, I hope that the firm has the same feel that we've had for 30 plus years, and that is of a family, regardless of how big we get. I hope that we will have continued the mission that Roy Cohen had when he started this firm, and that is to be a firm of integrity, of unmatched client relationships. I hope that we will have continued our growth in a very strategic way to become the best law firm we can be for the clients that we service. And I hope that we've continued to take advantage of technology as it becomes increasingly important, not only for us to represent our clients, but for our clients in their businesses, and that we can understand that. And that we have continued to be the leaders in the industries in which we represent clients.
Okay. I want to break this down into some chunks. So first, tell us a little bit about Cohen Segs, because this was not the first law firm. You did not start your career here. So I want to know a little bit about the firm and what drew you to the firm.
So I didn't know anything about Cohen Segs prior to 2006. I was working with a small Harrisburg real estate firm. And thought that I needed something different, a bigger platform. And so I looked at bigger firms and was not getting any headway. And I really found Cohen Segs. It was a fluke. I was sitting at my desk one day. I opened the Dauphin County Bar Journal, and I saw that some law firm in Philadelphia is looking for somebody to head up and grow their Harrisburg office. And they were looking specifically for somebody in the commercial litigation world. And it just seemed like a perfect fit. Fell into my lap, met all the owners very soon after that. And it was a very easy decision. It was a fit that made sense from the very beginning.
And how long have you been with the firm now?
So I started in February of '07. So I'm in my 18th year, almost 19 years now.
Okay. And so you start in the Harrisburg office. Firm was born in Philadelphia.
Right.
Where are all the offices of the firm now?
We have 9 offices in 7 states. So we're in Manhattan, we're in Newark, New Jersey, of course, Philadelphia, Wilmington, Fort Lauderdale, Florida, Harrisburg, Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, Washington, D.C., and we have a small office also in Kentucky.
Okay. How does the guy from Harrisburg become the managing partner of this multi-state, multi-office, Philadelphia-born firm?
Well, that's a great question because when the owners, our owners are our board of directors, when they started talking about who would be the next managing partner, my name came up, but that was a big concern. I'm not in Philadelphia, and how is that going to work? It was also discussed that I'm not part of the construction group. Construction is our largest practice group. At that time was probably 75% of our revenues. So how could a guy who's not in Philadelphia and who is not in tune with the construction business run this firm? A lot of discussion about what difference does it make where I am. Just really come out of COVID. So we knew that we could work remotely. It was 2.5 or 3 years that we knew we could do it. And I made a commitment to be present regardless of where I am locally or physically. I was going to be present and accessible, and I convinced the owners that that's really all that was important. I also committed to spending some time in Philadelphia so that I could, have face time with my team. And I don't want to say rocky road. There were some concerns early on, but I think, within 6 months or so, I think everybody had kind of forgotten that I'm not in Philadelphia 24/7. But it was a road.
Yeah, these kinds of concerns, someone who might not have the expertise and maybe the core function of a professional services business, or maybe the biggest revenue generator of a professional services firm. These are really common concerns, and what I hear you saying is it boils down to what makes a leader, and how do we lead in a professional services business.
I think
So
that's
how
right.
did you integrate into that leadership position, especially not being one of the founding fathers, if you will?
So I started about a year before my term in shadowing the then managing partner and spending time with him, spending time with our COO, who I work very closely with now, and really seeing, how things are done, how the sausage is made, so to speak. And then when my term began, I decided that it was important to keep very close contact with the prior managing partner, and spent a lot of time talking with him, sitting down with him, going over issues, and using him as a sounding board. And I kept the other founding members pretty close as well, and did not do too much without at least talking to one or more of them and bouncing things off and making sure that I wasn't going in a direction that maybe the firm shouldn't be going in.
How do you bridge the gap between founders and the up and coming generation of leaders for the firm? Because now you're in that position of you're going to pass a baton, right? So now how do you bridge that gap?
Yeah, it's not easy. I'm the first managing partner of the second generation. So I think in the history of the firm, this may be the most difficult role to fill, because you've got the first generation that are all still here. They're all very active. And most of them will be here probably through the end of my term. So we have a very collegial atmosphere, and we we know who our younger potential leaders are, and we spend a lot of time talking with them, including them in decisions, including them in committees and managing the firm. And I think that probably is how the gap is going to be bridged, just to continue to include the younger people that we've identified as being the future owners. I had a conversation 2 weeks ago with a young partner, and I told him, I said, you are a future managing partner of this firm. I could just see it. And it's just, so keeping them close and keeping them in the fold and involved, I think is the way to do it.
How do you get less experienced attorneys to look past something like base compensation, right? How do you get them to see the bigger picture of a culture, a career, the opportunities when professional services are really easy to throw money at people to try to tear them away?
So it's two things, I think. First, it's the culture that we have and we continue to improve, and that is that everybody is involved. It's open door. We all like each other, and I think keeping that going shows the younger, less experienced attorneys that there's something more than just the dollar, and I like it here. I'm a firm believer that money alone is not going to cause somebody to leave a place that they enjoy, and so we try to make sure that our younger people are enjoying what they're doing and enjoying the time that they're spending with the firm, because we recognize it's a different generation and there's a lot of time that they need to spend at work. The other is just making it known that this is not the kind of law firm where you're just going to work. This is a law firm where you have upward opportunities, and ownership is within the reach of everybody. And I think whether you're a first year associate or a third year non-equity partner, everybody knows that if that's what they want, there's a path to it. And that's very different than a lot of other firms, especially the big firms. So I think those two things, between culture and just letting people know that the long-term play, if that's what they're interested in, is a good thing here.
I want to dive in a bit. That time when you were looking for a different place to be, that wasn't an easy time.
No, it was not.
Talk about it a little bit. What was the struggle? What'd you struggle with?
So the struggle was that I loved where I was. I enjoyed going to work every day. I loved the people I worked with. Many of them were very close friends of mine, and some of them still are.
Okay, marry that up with what you just said about how people don't leave places they love.
So what was missing there was that upward opportunity. We were a small firm. I was an equity owner, but there was not a long-term vision in my mind. The first generation of that firm was getting to retirement age, and rather than discussions about how we as a firm are going to continue on into the future, the discussions turned to how are we, the ones left behind, going to afford to pay out the ones that are walking out. And that became a very difficult struggle for me, because I was a very hard worker. I brought a lot of revenue into that firm. Because I was the youngest owner, I was the least, or the lowest on the salary scale. And I just thought that there wasn't really a long-term future there for what I wanted to do.
Okay, so you start looking around, and anyone who's been an attorney or in a billable hour life of professional services knows your value is the value of your book of business. So what are you learning about yourself at that time?
I'm getting scared because I used to pride myself in thinking that firm did very little marketing. We didn't need to. Business came in, and I fell into that trap where the business just came in by word of mouth. So I didn't know how to market. I didn't know how to build a business. I didn't know how to grow my book. And frankly, I didn't even know what my book was. I had no idea how much money I was generating that if I left that firm would go with me. So it was a very, very scary time.
How long did it take you to find Cohen Segs Palace?
I think it was about 2 years from when I finally decided I need to make a move to starting at Cohen Segs Palace. So probably 18 months to 2 years, I think, is probably the time frame. It was a long process.
Any rejection along the way?
Lots of rejection along the way. And it is funny because I'm reminded of the movie that Michael J. Fox did years ago, where he's out of college and he's trying to find a job, and everybody keeps saying, "You're perfect, you just don't have any experience." He's, "Well, how am I going to get experience if I don't get a job?" I kind of felt that way, that, and firms were telling me, "Look, you're a great candidate, you got a great skill set, we've got a place for you. However, you don't really have much in the way of business." And when you've been practicing for, I guess at that time it was about 14 years, when you've been practicing for 14 years and you can't go to a law firm and say, "I've got a book of business of $500,000 or $2 million or $3 million," it's a real disadvantage. And that was the position I was in, because I knew I could develop revenue. I knew I was good at what I was doing, but I had no way of selling the entrepreneur, the business developer. And that's what firms are looking for when they're looking for lateral candidates.
Okay. So 2 things I want to hit here. One is, what advice do you have for up-and-comers in the legal profession? And 2, I don't want to lose sight of the fact that, we talk about business development. Today, my observation is that more than ever, professional services firms, law firms recognize the value of hard workers, producers who maybe don't necessarily have that business development. Maybe that wasn't recognized 20 years ago in the profession, and balancing that for a well-rounded business. So I want to talk about both of those. What's your advice to the up-and-comer business development people? And what's your advice for framing a business around the balance?
So my advice is to recognize the day you begin practicing law, or any professional services industry really, that you are a business in yourself. I mean, you are an entrepreneur, and your goal, if you want to be successful, is to develop business. I tell my young partners and my young associates all the time that if something goes wrong here and you want to leave, or we want you to leave, if you don't have something to bring with you, you're at a disadvantage. And so the marketing process, the business development process begins on day one. And it's not, it doesn't look the same as it does when you've been practicing for 25 years. But there are friend groups, there are associations, there are college roommates, everybody has a network. And developing that network and getting known in that network as being somebody who can provide a service at some point down the road. And the second part of that advice is to not get discouraged, because it's not a fast process. It can take years. In some cases, I have some clients that are some of my largest clients. It took me 10 or 15 years in some cases to develop that relationship. And so it's a long process. Sometimes you hit a home run right away, but you got to keep hitting the home runs. And so being patient with the process, trusting the process, and utilizing the resources that you have within a firm. Most firms of any significant size are going to have a marketing, a business development group that can help do that. And, if you're in a firm like our firm was for a while, where we discouraged any kind of marketing efforts by the young people, then you need to sell yourself to the people that run your firm about why you should be out marketing. So that's the advice I give. Just get started from day one and just be patient with the process.
Can you say more about discouraging efforts? What do you mean that you used to discourage efforts?
What I meant was, don't be discouraged by your efforts, because you're not going to see necessarily results on day one. It takes time to develop relationships. And, when you're young in a professional services industry, the people that you're talking with, the people that you have associations with, whether it's social or whether it's trade associate, they're younger as well, primarily. So they're not really the decision makers. So a lot of times business development is getting to know the younger people in those companies so that as they rise up in leadership in their companies, you're kind of riding the wave with them and you're available when they're making the decisions. So it's not just a matter of going out to taking a potential client out to dinner and saying, hey, I'd like to do your work, and it works. It's a long process, and you can't be discouraged by it.
And there's a genuineness to building those relationships,
yes.
Right? It can't just be, you're not just out there pitching. It's about building the relationship, and there's stuff that inevitably comes from building those relationships.
Right.
How about the other piece of that, the balancing, knowing that you have the rainmakers, the people who bring in business. You need great people who are willing to do work, and maybe they're not great at business development. So how do you balance those skills in a professional services business?
So, I mean, you're right. If you had a firm full of rainmakers, you'd bring in a lot of business, but you'd have nobody to do it, right? So there needs to be a mix. There needs to be a recognition, and I think the concept of being a working lawyer as opposed to a rainmaker is sometimes seen as pejorative, and it really isn't, and it shouldn't be. There's an absolute need for skilled tacticians in any professional services business. And what I tell people is, if you're not, and let's be clear, when we talk about rainmakers in a professional services business, we're very seldom talking about somebody who's just constantly bringing in business and never does any work. In most cases, you've got the rainmakers who are also tacticians.
Yep, seller-doer. It's the seller-doer model of business.
Correct. So if you're not going to be somebody who brings in business, then you just need to make sure that you're the best tactician in the room. Because the unfortunate reality in any professional services business is when there's a seat on the bus that's needed, the person who's going to be thrown off the bus is not the person that's bringing in a lot of business. It's the person who unfortunately isn't bringing in business and maybe isn't the best at what they do. So my advice to people is, look, I think everybody should have an entrepreneurial mind. I think everybody should want to develop business. I think everybody should want to get clients. The level is where it differs. Some people are going to be big rainmakers. Everybody should be a rainmaker to some extent. And they should want to do that. If they don't want to do that, then the recognition should simply be, I'm here, it's a job, I make good money, I enjoy what I'm doing, but understand that there's not necessarily a guaranteed future.
Well, or be the absolute best at what you do. Right? Can you make yourself irreplaceable by finding a super valuable niche?
Yeah, I mean, when we look at laterals, and even with some of our young attorneys who have come in without any real direction on where they're going to go professionally wise, we say, look, if you've got an interest in estate planning, if you've got an interest in insurance coverage work, develop that interest. Build that niche, because as soon as you are the expert in the firm on what we do, what we need, I mean, nobody's irreplaceable, right? But you've solidified your position. We have a young partner who does a lot of zoning and land development work. He's the only one in the firm that does it. We have a lot of land development and zoning work that our clients need. So he has developed a niche that gives him a very solid place in our firm.
Cohen Segs Palace is a partnership, yeah?
Well, we're a professional corporation.
Okay, PC.
Yeah.
So I'm curious about how Cohen Segs Palace created the structure to run the firm, because there are many different ways professional services organizations can run the firm, can run their businesses. There can be a lot of cooks in a kitchen.
Right.
And what I see in working with professional services firms, I see many different types of structures. I see management committees, maybe of 3 people. I see CEOs. I see managing partners. I see lots of different ways to run things, and I see a lot of the same great things, and I see a lot of the same problems that arise. So how did Cohen Segs choose its structure? And let's talk about that a little bit.
So, for years, as when we started out and as we were growing, we had a managing partner who was in charge of everything, running every aspect of the firm. He was a practicing lawyer as well. And for years, we had an executive director who would, assist him with the administrative stuff. And then as we got bigger, we realized that the managing partner is spending a lot of time doing stuff that the managing partner should not be doing. So when George Palace, who's my predecessor, started his term, he decided that what we should be doing is involving more people in how the sausage gets made, because it would, number one, take some pressure off of the managing partner, free him up to do the big things that the managing partner should be doing, and at the same time introduce the younger people into how it works, give them a taste of having some involvement in management to drive that leadership drive that we want in people. And so and at the same time, he created a administrative partner position, which is kind of like a vice president.
Mm-hmm.
So in his second term, we created the administrative partner position, and had very specific job description for the administrative partner and the things that the administrative partner did. And we created, 12, maybe 13 or so committees, everything from best practices to conflicts, to strategic hiring. And we put on those committees, primarily lawyers, but most committees had some staff members as well. And each committee really did the day-to-day work of that particular need, whether it's IT or knowledge management. We need to look at a new software program, that sort of thing. And then would that committee then would bring it to the executive committee that we created, which was built around the concept that the executive committee is the committee that really is making a lot of the decisions, but shouldn't be the owners of the company. It should be non-owners as well. So the executive committee was half owners, half non-owners. That committee really made a lot of the day-to-day decisions, worked very closely with our administrative staff.
Okay.
So that's still how we're structured today.
What works well about that structure, and what gets in the way?
So what works well is the ideas that come out of the committees, and at the beginning of every year, every committee develops what its plan is for the year. What are the things we need to focus on? And there are a lot of ideas that come out of every single one of the committees. And we've been able to, through the committee structure, get a lot of projects done over the last 6 years, 9 years, that would not have been able to be accomplished if we had the traditional managing partner running things. What gets in the way is, what always gets in the way when you have committees. Too many voices sometimes. Things get bogged down a little bit. It's almost like a strategic plan sometimes. You go through all the effort to develop a strategic plan, and then you forget about it. And a lot of times committees will have a great meeting, and then it will kind of be forgotten until the next meeting. So that's the disadvantage. I think the other disadvantage is that it's hard to find the right people for the right committee. And when you don't have the right person leading the committee, obviously it's not a good thing.
Say more about that.
Well, I mean, like I said, we don't have committees just for the sake of having committees. We have committees that are very active, and they have a job to do.
Mm-hmm.
Some of them are much more busy than others, but there's a plan, and there are tasks that need to get completed so that we can get projects completed. One of the projects we just migrated to the cloud for all of our data management and document management stuff, and that took a long time. So when you have somebody who's not really a good leader, the committee doesn't get done what it needs to get done. They meet, they talk about a lot of stuff, but nothing gets done.
Yeah, I see this too. And I see professional services businesses who are being run by committees do not have people on the committees who have the expertise for those committees either. And then they end up making more mistakes than they do advancing balls for that business. So you're fortunate because you have executive leaders, you have corporate functions in your business. You know that you have to have people with the expertise in fields to advance the business of the business. Yeah. A lot of professional services firms don't make that investment. So why do you?
Well, whether it's our people or our technology, we've always tried to be at the forefront so that when growth occurs, we're not trying to catch up. So what was it, 9 years ago, realized that having an executive director wasn't really cutting it. We really need a true chief operating officer who's going to run things. And from there, once you start down that road, then you just realize, you need specialists. You need an HR specialist. We're 150 employees. For the longest time, we were under 40, under 50. But once you get to a certain size, you need these people. So we've just made a concerted effort to invest in the people, in the positions, and we're constantly looking at where we can improve that. And one thing that we're getting to the point now where we're thinking we might be big enough that we need a CFO now. We've got a great accounting department. We've got a great director of our accounting department, but we don't have a CFO. And we're fortunate that our COO has an accounting background and was in accounting for years. But so we recognize that, and I think the owners recognize that the people we have are assets, the positions that we have are assets, and we need to invest in them.
Steve, you were a trial lawyer. How'd you end up in leadership?
Well, I guess the first step was when I joined the firm, and I was, dubbed the Harrisburg office managing partner.
And that was an
Which
office of how many people?
at that time it was two full timers, me and my assistant,
Mm-hmm.
and we would have a mix of attorneys for other offices who would come periodically. But it
Yeah.
was for a year, it was just the two of us. Then we hired a third. So for most of the time that I've been with the firm, the Harrisburg office has only had 2-3 people.
Yeah.
So very small office.
And now you're the managing partner of a firm of over 140, 147 or so people. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
I never had a plan of becoming a managing partner. I've wanted to be a lawyer, a trial lawyer, since I was in, very early in college. Never ever thought of growing up someday to be a leader of a company. It just, the more I was here, the more I saw how things were working, recognizing that the first generation is not going to be here forever. It just seemed natural to, make myself available. My first leadership role was as the administrative partner. I was the first administrative partner. So from there, it just, I guess maybe the leadership bug bit a little bit.
So, in stating the obvious for anyone viewing this, you can see our last name is the same. And for those listening, it feels like a good time to tell everybody that you're my husband.
Yep.
And we've been married for 22 years.
We have.
We both have had big careers over the course of these 22 years.
Yep.
What was the hardest part for you in managing our lives and these busy careers?
I think just making the time to disengage from the work life. Because in this business, it's a 24/7 life. You have clients that have problems at all hours of the day and night, and there's work that needs to be done, and so it's very easy to fall into the pattern where you're just work, 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 work. And so I think just not finding the time, making the time to disengage and spend time on the family.
Okay, our kids, we have 2 daughters, they're 19 and 21. I mean, I remember we had to live and die by our electronic calendar of who's doing drop off, who's doing pickup. I mean, those
Right.
days were crazy.
Yeah.
What do you feel when you think back on those days, plus managing a practice, managing an office, COVID, all of those things? Like, what do you feel? What comes to mind for you?
Exhausted. Exhausted. Um, I was fortunate, as were you, to have a lot of flexibility.
Mm-hmm.
And I like to talk to my younger colleagues who are finding work-life balance difficult, and I like to tell them my story. That I don't know that there was a family dinner that I ever missed. I never missed a dance recital, never missed a basketball game, and somehow I was able to create a business for myself that is very successful. But it takes a lot of work. And when you said electronic calendars, that wasn't just a metaphor. I mean, everything has to be calendared, and you just have to know, this is the day that I'm going to be a little bit late to get to the office because I got to get the kids to a doctor's appointment or to daycare or to the dentist and then back to school. And it's just recognizing that as important as your work life is, there's nothing more important than the family life.
Okay. It's easy to say that nothing's more important than family. When you are early in your professional career, your calendar is often not within your own control. You have bosses putting work on you. You have courts scheduling things. And
that's true even now.
Right. Okay. So we can talk about how we had a lot of flexibility. We had that was hard. It was hard.
It was hard. A lot of late nights.
Okay. So, we'd be setting our alarm early in the morning. We'd be up late at night after the kids went to bed doing work. It wasn't easy to prioritize the way we wanted to prioritize.
Wasn't easy.
And what did you say?
I said you're right. It wasn't easy. It was very challenging.
Okay, well, and for everyone listening, Steve knows that my favorite phrase from him is "you're right." The calendar and first in time to the rules we had, first in time to the calendar wins. If you want to put something on the calendar after that, if it was an event, you're responsible for finding the babysitter. I mean, we established all these rules of engagement for how we could manage these careers. And it got messy at times.
And it's funny because it was created out of necessity. We didn't sit down one day and say, okay, how are we gonna run our lives, our professional lives, and have a family at the same time? It just we got to a point where we realized, oh my God, we both have to be out of the house at 7:00. How are the kids getting to school? It's a transformation that occurs, and every day there's something new that comes up. But
so, is there anything you would have done differently?
I'm not sure there's anything I would have done differently. We could get into the fact that I was an angry elf for a lot of years, and could have done things very differently in that aspect of my life. But from a business and managing the family, no, I think the way we did it was it worked for us. It may not work for everybody, but it worked for us.
Well, you opened the door. So what did you carried a lot of stress for a long time.
I did.
Talk about it. Where did all that stress come from?
Well, it wasn't work because I loved what I did. I was very, very happy in my profession. almost never had a bad day at work. I just loved what I did. I loved my clients. I loved the people I work with. I loved the work I did. Um, it was just, I think I had very little patience. So when it comes to, something not working the way it should, it would create stress, and that would create its own problems.
Oh my
Uh,
gosh, the best was putting anything together.
anything,
Anything that came in a box with parts and screws.
anything, anything. Or if I got cut off in traffic. So there was just a lot of internal stressors, I guess, and you know, I'm sure goes back to many different childhood events, um, but yeah, I was a very different person when I was not in the office because, and it wasn't family driven. I wasn't stressed in the family. It was just all this stuff, the external stuff that would, create that impatience and that stress that would then impact other things.
Okay, so I took a few years off between college and law school. So when I entered the legal profession, I was, I don't know, a decade behind you. And I really quickly jumped into that networking and relationship building space.
Yeah, you did.
And you were surprised early in my career at how I built my community, how I established relationships, how quickly I did it, and how we would be out or you would be out places and people would say, "Oh, you're Claudia's husband." Yet you you built an amazing community. How did you do it? And we could talk about the different ways we did this, but start with how you did it. How did you build your relationships, your community, and ultimately your business?
So before I even had my law license, I had my first client, and it was a complete fluke. I saw a help wanted ad in the local newspaper for a company in Baltimore looking for a lawyer in Pennsylvania, and I responded to it. It was an area of law that I didn't know. It was an area of law that I never dreamed I would get involved in. And that relationship then led to kind of the spider web of relationships, because this was a property management company that had 9 properties in Pennsylvania, and periodically one would sell. And because I had the rapport with the site staff that I had, the new company would keep me on. So the early part of my career was really just that, doing good work for my current clients. And as their properties sold or they acquired new properties, then I'd get to know more people. And that was really the way I developed business for the entire time I was at the old firm. When I started at Cohen Segs, and I had access to marketing people and business development people who sat down with me and said, "Okay, so what's the plan?" And it's something that I had never done before. So now I have to think about a plan. Okay, so what's my plan? And I, years earlier, had joined the Pennsylvania Apartment Association. It's an association of big management companies and owners, but I wasn't active in it.
Can I jump in and pause for
Sure.
a minute?
Sure.
You said something really important. When the team at Cohen Segs sat down with you, the marketing, the business development people, we're not talking about lawyers. We're talking about experts hired to do marketing, those professionals.
Yep.
And they said, "What's the plan?"
Yep.
You trusted them. Yeah?
Yeah. Trusted them, trusted the process.
Okay. Because what I see often is that the professionals, whether they're attorneys or accountants or engineers, there can be a lack of trust for the people in the marketing and business development spaces, and thinking, "You don't know what I do, so you can't help me develop business. You don't know the technical aspects of what I do, so you're not going to be able to really help me." In my experience, when you have really great marketing and BD people, it doesn't matter what your profession is. they are good at marketing and BD, period. Right? So keep going. And how did that process work for you?
So it was a two-way street, really. I mean, I had to educate them on at that point, what my client base looked like.
And
Um,
did this take non-billable time? Because this is the other issue that
of
that comes
course,
up, right? Right.
of
So you have
course,
to invest
of course.
some non-billable time in order to get the return on your investment.
Absolutely,
Okay,
absolutely.
keep going.
And then together we would talk about different opportunities that I could look for: speaking engagements, writing engagements, um, associations that maybe are related to my industries that I'm involved in, and joining associations. They're the ones very early on that really implanted in my mind that being a member of an organization is just the very start of it. You have to be active in the organization. You have to get on committees. You have to be on board positions. You can't just go to the annual dinner and expect an association to do anything for you. So I got involved, and I'll tell you that the Pennsylvania Apartment Association was the first one that I got involved very heavily. And that was primarily, there were two things that happened that created my understanding of how important those relationships that I was building were. And the first was when I was having lunch with a client who asked me, why am I not a member of that association?
Hmm.
And I didn't even know the association existed. But I went right back to the office. I said, if my client is a member of an association, they're asking me why I'm not, that's a problem.
Ah,
So got involved, and then I was doing a speaking engagement for the apartment association, and there was a member of the association who was another. She did furniture rentals, and what I noticed was I would see her at every single event, and she would come to things that had nothing to do with the business she was trying to create. And I asked her one day, I said, why are you always why are you at the seminars that I'm doing? They have nothing to do with your business. And she said something that I'll never forget. And that was, I can't be successful in this organization if people don't know me. So I come to everything. And so that's really how the snowball effect of building my business occurred, because I got very active in that. There's not a member of that association who doesn't know who I am and who would not pick up the phone, to chat. And so it was a very important step in just recognizing that, this isn't, and it's not tit for tat. This is not a res ipsa kind of thing, right?
mm-hmm.
I'm involved in this organization not because I'm trying to sell to people. I mean, of course, I want their business. We talked earlier about salesmen and sales. You can't be salesy when you're building a business. And I learned that very early on. People don't want to talk. Look, I mean, how much stress do every one of us get when solicitors show up at our front door? Nobody wants to be sold to. So I learned very early on how to talk to people at these events, and when I'm meeting new people, and just realizing very early on that the more you let them speak about themselves and their business, first of all, the more you learn, but the
Mm-hmm.
less salesy it appears to be. And they don't walk away from that conversation thinking, man, he's just trying to get my business. They walk away saying, wow, he was
Yeah.
really interested in what I do.
And it is about having a genuine interest and learning about what their issues and opportunities are. Because once we can start having a meaningful conversation, and even in that 10 minutes, if there's a nugget of meaningful impact that we can make, or meaningful connection, that will stick with someone.
And then that translates into the client relationship, because you're not just providing a service for somebody, you have a relationship with this client. And that's how long-term client relationships develop, when you take a true an obvious interest in their business and making their business better. It's not just solving their problems for them. It's what can I do to help you make your business better? And that's what I try to do.
Steve, you had a health scare
I did. Yeah.
almost a year ago.
Hmm.
And you learned a lot at that point in time. And you learned a lot about the team and the people who you work with, who had your back, and talk about it a little bit.
But it kind of goes back to the collegiality that I mentioned earlier. I mean, we're 140, 150 people, but we all believe that we're part of the team. And when somebody is down and out and needs assistance, there's not a shortage of people stepping up. And so it wasn't surprising to me that happened. It wasn't surprising to me that there were so many inquiries about how I am, what's going on, because that's just the way it's been from day one when I joined the firm. And that's one of the things when you said, what's my vision for when my term is over? That's one of the things I hope we still are, is that group of people who don't just work together, but the group of people who are working towards something together and building something that's going to outlast all of us.
For the record, there was an understandable misdiagnosis where everyone, we all thought your time might be limited on this planet, and it turned out to just, be something really innocuous, which is great. But yeah, people really stepped up, and that whole notion of do not worry about work, don't think about work. Everybody had everything covered.
It was probably the only time in 34 plus years of practice that I was actually completely checked out for an extended period of time. And I wasn't terribly concerned about it because I knew people had my back.
Yes, well, I did take your phone away from you.
Well, yeah, some of it's not by choice, but it worked. Yeah. It's workable.
Mm-hmm. What do you like to do when you're not working? How do you blow off steam?
It's going to sound boring, but I work so hard when I'm working that vegging may be one of my favorite pastimes. Just vegging and not reading, but thinking about the books that I have in my bag that I should be reading or would like to be reading. But for activities, I enjoy clay shooting. I enjoy shooting guns. I enjoy drinking wine. I enjoy spending time with you and the girls.
You're a true crime junkie.
Well, I am a true crime junkie. That's true. I'm very seldom in the car when I don't have some podcast going.
Yeah, and what's your key takeaway from all the true crime?
Nobody gets away with anything. It may take 10 years, but they're going to catch you.
Good lesson. And that if ever you're going to do anything to me, you have to get rid of
your mouth guard,
my retainers.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Yeah. Got to get rid of everything.
Yeah. Okay. I'm glad we have this solidified in my podcast realm.
Yeah. We don't have to worry about that.
Any piece of advice you would have for your younger, up and coming, new lawyer self as you reflect back on your career?
Get out of the mindset that you can't, and throw away all of the fears that we all have of rejection, because those are the things that really hold us back. I look, there are some people who are just not built for business development, and I understand that, but I think most of us are. I think most of us can go out and meet people and have good quality conversations, develop relationships, develop business back and forth. But it's the fear of rejection. It's the fear of looking stupid. It's the fear of, well, what if they don't like me, that stands in the way. And one of the things that I've said to people is, look, the worst that can happen is they say no. So if you're not asking, you can't get it. So I say to my girls all the time, you're never going to get what you don't ask for. So yeah, my advice is persevere, get out of your own head, get out of your own way, go out, build relationships, and enjoy doing it. Because if you don't enjoy doing it, it's going to come across as fake and it's not going to be successful.
I remember a conversation we had when I said something to you about you were going to meet with someone, and I said, well, why don't you just ask? What can we do to do more work with you? And there was a bit of an aha light bulb moment for you in that. How did that change your approach to how you work with existing or potential new clients?
I'm always cross marketing. I'm always letting my clients know what other services we have that we can provide. If they, if I know that they're coming up to a point where they're going to have some issues, I'm not afraid. I'm not afraid to quote unquote sell our services because I've been able to do it in a way that's not salesy. And so I think getting to the point where I'm not afraid of hearing no has just given me a lot of confidence. It creates this idea that really what I'm doing is just educating people. And I've told people, I've told current clients, I've told former clients, I've told prospective clients, I may not be the guy for you. My firm might not be the right firm for you. And if we're not, I'll point you in the right direction. If you've got a relationship with somebody now, why do you want to talk to me? I'd love to talk to you, but so yeah, I think it's really getting to the point where what you're doing really is educating people on where they're heading, what their needs are, and if you're the one that can provide the service, then that's great. And if not, you've still provided a service.
And what I hear you saying in there is that it isn't about you at all. It isn't about your firm. It's about the client and what the client needs. And and sometimes we aren't the right person, and that's okay. There is plenty of work out there, and it's about finding the right work and ensuring that the clients get what they need. Because ultimately, if what would happen if you took on a client and then could not meet the needs of that client?
The least of the problems would be maybe I don't get paid. They don't give me work in the future, but the worst of it is that they talk to people, and all of a sudden, either I or my firm, we're the lawyers that just want to get you in the door, but they're not really that good. And in any professional services business, the reputation is the most important thing.
Yep. And that's what we cherish, right? We cherish that we're doing the right thing for the right people at the right time. And it's okay to not be everyone's everything. Awesome.
Yeah, you can't be. You can't be.
So Steve, how can people reach you? How can people find you?
Well, they can call you.
That's awesome.
Our website is the easiest way to find me. It's www.cohenseglias.com. CohenSeglias.
How can Cohen Segs help people? Just give a quick rundown of the different ways your firm helps clients, service areas, practice areas.
Yeah, so we're really full service. Most of our clients are businesses, but we have a good personal client base as well. But what we do, we're really full service. We do everything from estate planning and domestic relations for individuals, all the way up to our construction practice, labor and employment, landlord-tenant work, real estate. Our team is very broad based and geographically expansive as well. So I like to tell people that whether I'm a good fit or we're a good fit for you is a separate question. But whatever your legal need is, we probably have the capability of handling it for you. So, full
awesome.
service.
Well, thanks. For people
Thank you.
watching, our dog Katie here thanks you. Thanks so much for joining
awesome.
me today. I'll see you later.
Okay.
All right. Thanks, everyone, for joining me on today's episode of Leadership Backstage, where you got to go behind the curtain, not only with Steve, but a little bit behind the curtain with me, and a little bit of my life and marriage and life in a dual person, busy, complicated, working family. So thanks, and until the next time. we go behind the curtain. Have a good one.
Take care.
The Leadership Backstage podcast requires more than a conversation. It takes action, research, and collective wisdom. If today's episode resonated with you, we'd love to hear your insights. Join the conversation and help us shape the future together. We'll be back with more stories, strategies, and real-world solutions that are making a difference for everyone. In the meantime, be sure to subscribe, rate, write a review, and share it with someone you think would benefit from it too. Thanks for listening, and see you on the next episode.